And welcome everyone as we go ahead and look at a programming example with an array list. And you can see here I've gone ahead and set up a very simple array list, and you can see it's a array list of type string, and we've set it to a size of 5. So it's a very small, easy to work with array list. Now I'm going to show a couple examples of how to do a couple things here just to kind of help reinforce things, even though array lists again are not that difficult to be able to use. So let's just go ahead and start with array list here. And let's just say I want to add an element to it. Now, you notice if I hit dot, you can see, of course, we get all our list of different methods that we can use. And so add is right there. So I can go ahead and add any element of type string. So let's just go ahead and say we want to add a string. Let's just go ahead and have it say computer science. All right, and that's our element that we have added to it. And I'm just going to go ahead and add the ability to print out what is inside this array right now. Now, the best way to do this is with a for each loop, because again, we can just traverse through the elements of the array and print those out. So we're just going to set this up for string, and we can call this like element, and we're going to say that's in array list. And remember, this is saying for each string element in array list, what do we want to do? Well, we simply want to do a system.out.println of the elements at array list. Now, of course, I can't just put array list like this without having the for each loop properly set up. So let's go ahead and change this from array list here to element. So let's go ahead and run this class here, and just to see what we go ahead and get. So I'm just going to clear this out, left that in my console from last time. And if we run this, we can, of course, we are getting our previous class there. So let me make sure we get the right class here, run the correct lab. There we go. And you can see it just says computer science. Now that's because even though this array list is of size 5, if we think about how many elements have we added to this list? Well, we've only added one element to it. Now this is a pretty small list, so we could, of course, come in here and add elements to it. Or if we wanted to do a array list.add for each element, we could do that as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and actually add in a list of code. And I'm going to do another for each loop here because again, it's going to make me very simple here. So I'm going to say for each element in the array list, let's go ahead and this time let's do an array list.add, and let's add in just a simple prompt. And what we want this to be is actually something maybe the user is going to type in. So let's go ahead and bring in our scanner class. And I'm going to go ahead and create my scanner object here. And since we have this here now, we can of course set this up. So we're going to say kb.next line. And what do we want that to be? Well, we want that to be something that the user is typing in. So let's just say string input is equal to kb.next line. And then we can replace this element here then with input. There we go. And now that this is set up, we can of course theoretically go through and add that list. And what we want to do is then print that out. I'm actually going to, let's just see how this works here. If I add this for each loop statement here, just to see what that looks like before we add computer science. So I'm just going to go ahead and run this. Clear that out. And you can see it's still giving me computer science. So it's actually didn't actually take in any input here, which is something to note that this doesn't necessarily always work the way you might think it does. Now the reason for this is because we're trying to use a for each loop to traverse through that list. And it doesn't again work the same way as we might think. So I'm actually going to switch this over to a normal while loop. And we could just say, or we could do a for loop as well. But I'm just going to say while this, and because if we look back at our array list too, how we handled that one, we can say while not done, and we're just going to fill this in until a certain value has been met. So there's multiple different ways to handle this, but let's just go ahead and follow this one here, just as an example. So I'm going to say while true here. I'm just going to do a while true. And all I'm going to do is, since we know that this is size 5 in this case, I'm just going to set this up as the way we have it. And we're going to say if, we're going to say, let's create a little variable here. Let's just call this int size equals 5, just so we know that we can use this. We're going to say size plus plus if size is less than, or not less than, but is, let's just say equal to 5, or we can even say that's greater than or equal to, there you go. And then all we need to do is break out of that loop. All right, so now we got some input. Okay, so let's go ahead and do, let's just say like hello. And you can see our program terminated, and we only ever got really one input, and of course it did print out that element right there, so there it is, but we never got to put more input in here. And so we may have to come back and look at this. So let's look at our example here. If you notice in here, when this one worked, we had a system.println input an entry. We said next is keyword to next line. And then of course we added that, and we entered more items for the list. And then of course it just did if it is, yes, continue on. So this one, we said if size is greater than or equal to 5. Okay, well, size is not greater than or equal to 5. All right, in this case, because size is starting at 5, so we actually want to start this at 0. So there's a simple programming mistake. You might have caught that. I did that already, but that's okay. It's easy to fix that. So let's go ahead and do hello. How are you today? Question mark. And then you can see now it spat that back out to us. Hello, how are you today? And then you'll see that is this first one here. Then we added computer science, and you can see hello, how are you today? Computer science. And just to go ahead and make sure we see that with a break, I'm just going to do a system.out.println, just a blank one here, just so we can see that difference here of where those two for each loops are working. And I'm going to put the same input. And you can see there is our first for each traversal. There's our second one. Now, let's just say I want to go ahead and remove an ArrayList element. All right. And we can go ahead and just go look for remove. And of course, here's our remove right here. So if I want to remove, let's say, an object of that ArrayList, we can do that. Or we can go by the index value. I'm going to go ahead and do this one by the index value here. And let's just say I want to remove the first element here. All right, the very first element of that array. And if I go ahead then and let's say reprint that list, so let's just break this up with a nice print line here. Just so again we can see this without having it trip on top of each other. Okay, and so here's our first output. We got hello, how are you today? Then we get hello, how are you today? Computer science. And then we got how are you today? Computer science. And that's because it removed that first element here. And if I want to see the size of this one, just to show this here, so let's go ahead and do a quick, let's change our print line here to show the size of this, just so we can see what this is. So if we grab the size of each of these here, so I'm just going to copy this, make my life a little simpler, just so we can see how this is working each time we change those elements here. Okay, if we look at this, size 5, size 5, size 5. All right, very interesting how that works. So we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 elements here. All right, and plus 1. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And it said that it is still technically size 5. Pretty cool how that actually, even though it says it's size 5, it's stretched to include this here. Now, if we, of course, were to add some more elements in here, it's not necessarily going to be anything too great. So I'm just going to go ahead and just add a couple more instances of computer science here, just so you can see this in play. And you can see now that I've done that, I'm actually going to bring this console window up just a little bit so you can see a little bit better here. It stayed at size 5, but now with these extra instances here, you'll see it grew to size 7. And even though I removed that one element, you can see it is still at size 7. In fact, even if I come in here and I say, hey, I'm going to do a couple of removing of these. So let's just go ahead and add a couple of remove zeros here. All right, and let's actually make this one, let's say element 5 here. And I'm going to go, let's just leave that at 050. All right, so let's go ahead and remove that. Hello, how are you today? Question mark. And one of the things you'll see, oh, look, it readjusted that size for us. It's saying that array size is that. Now, the interesting thing about that is because this array size is 5. Now, if I went ahead and let's just change this to 15. So I'm going to make this much larger than what we're starting. So we all know we're only taking 5 elements because I'm stopping it purposely here with my fill loop. So how is that going to change how this array lists? All right. Now you'll notice even though it still is technically of size 15, the size is only referring to these elements in here. So it's very interesting how that is actually kind of being played in here. Now, let's just add a couple more things in here just to kind of wrap this up. So if we go back to our array list commands, we can of course play around with each of these to really see how they all work. But what I want to show, of course, is if we want to clear this array. So I'm just going to go ahead and clear this array, and so that should technically remove each of those elements out of there. So I'm just going to go ahead and just copy these 2 lines of code here. So we can go ahead and first see what is this going to look like after we've cleared it out, and then what will be the size. All right, and so you'll see there's our last instance of that array right there. It gave a size 5. Then we cleared it, and you'll notice nothing got printed out because when we cleared it, our size is now 0. So very cool how that all works, and it's all natural. Notice how clean that is. I didn't have to write a bunch of different things, for example, with how I would do this with arrays. So again, nice code, how we can work with this, and I hope that gives you some good insight how we can use not just array lists, but also for each loops to help us with some of that traversal.